Welcome to Life Stories. What happens when the underdog turns the tables on those who doubted him? Ethan Griffin spent a decade building his empire in silence while his arrogant brother-in-law, Daniel Preston, mocked his dreams. But when Daniel least expected it, Ethan took over Summit Bank, the very institution Daniel ruled with an iron fist. Betrayal, redemption, and the true meaning of power. This is a story of resilience, ambition, and justice. Stay with us as we uncover the twists and turns of this incredible journey. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's story. I straightened my tie, taking a final glance at my reflection in the mirror. The navy blue suit wasn't designer, nor was it tailored to perfection, but it was sharp enough for tonight's occasion. The presentation materials in my leather briefcase were immaculate, numbers checked, projections sound, and the strategy polished to the finest detail. This wasn't just another dinner at my sister's mansion in Greenwich. Tonight, I would finally prove myself. For over a decade, I had worked in silence, making careful, strategic investments through my company, Griffin Capital. While others sought prestige and quick returns, I built something sustainable, something real. And tonight, I would pitch my biggest venture yet, a $2 billion development project designed to revolutionize sustainable housing and community growth. All I needed was backing from Summit Bank, where my brother-in-law, Daniel Preston, served as executive vice president. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, Daniel had been the one to deny my first business loan, dismissing my ideas as childish fantasies. Back then, I had nothing but ambition and a sketchpad full of grand designs. Daniel had laughed at me, rejecting my proposal with a smirk before moving on to discuss his latest luxury purchase. And now he was the one person standing between me and my vision. As I pulled up to Lauren's mansion, I inhaled deeply, steadying my nerves. My sister had changed since marrying into the Preston family's banking empire. The warm, protective girl who used to defend me from schoolyard bullies had become someone else entirely, polished, distant, more concerned with her status than her roots. "Ethan," she greeted, leaning in for an air kiss, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "You're looking professional," she added, giving my suit a quick scan. There was no warmth in the compliment. Daniel had just returned from Milan, and she couldn't wait to show off his newest collection of tailored Italian suits. Inside, the mansion gleamed with an excess of wealth, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, and what I suspected were reproduction paintings posing as originals. The dining room was no different, a monument to new money trying desperately to look old. Daniel sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. Surrounding him were Summit Bank executives and their wives, dressed in designer gowns, sipping aged wine and exchanging conversations about investments I knew were driven purely by profit, never purpose. "Ethan, the small business genius graces us with his presence," Daniel announced, raising his glass with a knowing smirk. Laughter rippled around the room. I forced a polite smile. "Good to see you too, Daniel. Still running that little investment firm of yours?" he mused, swirling his wine. "What was it called again?" "Pigeon Capital." "Griffin Capital," I corrected, placing my laptop on the table. "And actually, that's what I wanted to discuss." Daniel groaned dramatically. "Oh no, not another one of your proposals." He turned to Lauren. "Remember his last one? Affordable housing, because people actually want to live in those." Laughter filled the room again. My sister giggled nervously, avoiding my gaze. I took a steady breath. "The proposal is solid. A $2 billion development project, sustainable housing, commercial spaces, community facilities. We have the land. We have the architecture. We just need financing. And Summit Bank is in the perfect position to." "$2 billion?" Daniel nearly choked on his wine. "Have you lost your mind?" He laughed. And soon, the others joined in. "You can barely afford that suit. And you want to play with billions?" I stayed firm. "The numbers work. If you just take a look." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. The room fell silent. "You want to know why you'll never succeed, Ethan? Because you don't understand how this world works." He leaned back, adjusting his pristine Italian suit. "Real business isn't about helping people or building communities. It's about power. And you, dear brother-in-law, have none. His words hung in the air. He stood, raising his glass as if to deliver a toast. Tomorrow morning, I'm presenting to Summit Bank's board about our latest acquisition. He smirked. Real business. Big business. Something you'll never understand. So, stick to your small dreams. Ethan, it's all you're good for. Forced laughter filled the room again. My stomach twisted, but I remained composed. Just then, my phone vibrated. A message from my lawyer. Documents confirmed. Transfer complete. You now own 51% of Summit Bank's shares. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ready to meet your new employees? I exhaled slowly, lifting my gaze to meet Daniel's amused expression. He was still laughing at his own joke. Still so sure of his place at the top. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. I arrived at Summit Bank's headquarters at precisely 8:45 a.m. Wearing the same off-the-rack suit from last night. The lobby was bustling with early morning activity, bankers in tailored suits. Assistants rushing with stacks of paperwork. And security personnel stationed at every corner. As I stepped forward, the security guard at the front desk did a double take. He had been turning me away from Daniel's floor for years. Today, he hesitated. Mr. Griffin? He asked. Uncertain. I gave him a polite nod. I believe I have a meeting upstairs. My lawyer, Sarah Chen, was already waiting by the elevators. She was calm, professional, but I caught the slight flicker of amusement in her eyes. Everything's in place, she assured me as the elevator doors slid open. The board members have arrived early, eager to hear Daniel's big announcement. I smirked. They don't know there's been a slight change in the agenda, do they? Sarah shook her head. No, the share acquisitions were compartmentalized. Every transaction appeared independent. Even our sources inside the bank say Daniel is still confident. He thinks today is about his expansion plans. I exhaled slowly. A decade of careful planning, of staying in the shadows, of playing the long game, had all led to this moment. As the elevator doors opened on the top floor, I walked into a boardroom made entirely of mahogany and marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The grandeur of it was meant to intimidate, to remind everyone in the room of their place in the financial hierarchy. Daniel stood at the head of the table, his signature smug smile plastered on his face. He was in his element, relishing the power he believed he held over the room. Then his eyes landed on me. His smirk faltered. Ethan, what the hell are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. Sarah stepped forward before I could speak. She placed a folder neatly on the polished table. Actually, Mr. Griffin has every right to be here. Daniel grabbed the documents, flipping through the pages. His face went from red to white in a matter of seconds. What is this? He muttered. I pulled out my chair and took a seat. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Griffin Capital holds 51% of Summit Bank's shares. A murmur rippled through the boardroom. Bank executives leaned forward, grabbing copies of the documents, whispering among themselves. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he reread the paperwork. That's impossible, he hissed. We would have known if someone was buying up shares. Would you? I pulled up a presentation on the boardroom screen, displaying a complex web of companies and acquisitions, all leading back to Griffin Capital. Daniel's eyes darted across the screen, scanning the tangled web of financial maneuvers, shell companies, and silent partnerships. You were too busy looking down on small businesses. Daniel, you never noticed them uniting under one banner. My banner. The board members began nodding, realization sinking in. Daniel's expansion plans had been bleeding Summit Bank dry, alienating smaller clients in favor of high-risk, high-reward ventures. He had built his empire on aggressive growth, ignoring the foundation beneath him. I, on the other hand, had spent the last 10 years quietly supporting those clients. The businesses Daniel had cast aside had turned to me. His voice cracked. This is a trick. I shook my head. No, Daniel, this is business. His jaw tightened. The Preston family has controlled this bank for generations. Until now, I replied, because while you were busy playing king, I was building something real. The doors burst open, and Lauren stormed in. Tears streaked her face. Daniel, what's happening? Why is our account frozen? Daniel whipped around, his breathing uneven. Our account is what? I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. About that. We need to discuss some irregularities in your personal trading accounts. Daniel turned back to me. For the first time in his life. He looked afraid. 1 year later, the name on the building had changed. The grand stone facade now read Griffin and Partners Financial Group, a merger of Summit Bank with my other companies. The marble floors and mahogany walls remained. But the atmosphere was different. Employees walked with purpose, not fear. The boardroom no longer served as a stage for ego-driven speeches but as a space for real discussions about ethical banking and community growth. I had spent years chasing power. Not for personal gain, but to prove that business could be different. That banks didn't have to prey on the weak. That real strength lay in building, not destroying. Daniel had left New York. His reputation in ruins. His so-called friends abandoned him the moment his empire crumbled. The divorce had been swift. Lauren had finally found her voice again. Instead of hiding behind wealth and status, she had started the Preston Children's Fund, providing financial aid for underprivileged kids. One afternoon, my assistant handed me a loan application. A small bakery downtown was looking for funding. The owner's name sparked a memory. A woman who had once given me free coffee when I was struggling to build Griffin Capital. Believing in my dream when no one else did, I signed the papers immediately. Approved, with compliments from the small dream believer. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's proving them wrong. And in the end, the greatest power isn't what you take from others, but what you help them build. Subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring videos.